I've always been the type to keep my life straightforward and predictable. My name is John Mitchell, and I work as a senior technician at a local manufacturing plant in Atlanta. It's a job that demands focus, monitoring assembly lines, troubleshooting machinery, and ensuring everything runs smoothly so hundreds of products ship out on time. Today was no different. I woke up at 5:30 a.m., brewed a strong cup of coffee, and headed out the door by 6:15. The drive to work was uneventful, just the usual rush hour traffic on I-85, with podcasts playing in the background to keep my mind sharp. By lunchtime, I was deep into calibrating a new robotic arm, sweat dripping down my forehead under the fluorescent lights. It's honest work, pays the bills, and leaves me with enough energy to enjoy my evenings. As the clock hit 5 p.m., I clocked out, feeling that satisfying exhaustion that comes from a productive day. I stopped by the grocery store on the way home to pick up some fresh veggies and a couple of steaks. Nothing fancy, just enough for a quiet dinner on my patio. Living in a quiet suburb had always been my dream after years of apartment hopping in the city. My house is modest, with a well-maintained backyard and an in-ground pool that I installed myself a few years back. It's my sanctuary, a place to unwind with a cold drink and maybe a book after a long shift. Pulling into my driveway around 6:15 p.m., everything seemed normal at first. The sun was still high, casting a warm glow over the neighborhood, and the birds were chirping in the oaks lining the street. I grabbed my groceries from the trunk and headed inside, but as I walked through the house to the back door, something caught my eye. Through the sliding glass door, I saw movement in my backyard. At first, I thought it was a neighbor's kid or maybe a delivery person, but as I stepped closer, my heart skipped a beat. There she was, my neighbor Karen, lounging in my pool like she owned the place. She was wearing a bright pink bathing suit, splashing around with a flow tie, and she had a few towels and a cooler set up on my deck chairs. I stood there for a moment, frozen, trying to process what I was seeing. Karen and I had exchanged polite hellos over the years, but we weren't friends. She was one of those overly enthusiastic types, always organizing block parties or complaining about minor things at the HOA meetings. But this? Trespassing into my private backyard? It didn't make sense. I set my groceries down on the kitchen counter and stepped outside, my mind racing with questions. What on earth was she doing in my pool? I pushed open the back door and stepped onto the patio, my work boots crunching on the gravel path. The air was thick with the scent of chlorine and sunscreen, and I could hear Karen laughing to herself as she floated on her back. She didn't even notice me at first, which only added to my growing irritation. I cleared my throat loudly, and she jolted upright, splashing water everywhere. Her eyes widened when she saw me standing there, arms crossed, but she recovered quickly, flashing a wide, almost manic smile. John. Hey there. I didn't expect you home so early, she said, as if this was the most normal thing in the world. I stared at her, trying to keep my voice steady. Karen, what the hell are you doing in my pool? This is private property. She paddled to the edge and climbed out, water dripping from her suit, not even bothering to grab a towel. Oh, come on, John. Don't be such a stick in the mud. I was just getting things ready for a little get-together. The weather's perfect, and I figured your pool would be the perfect spot. Everyone's been dying for a pool party. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Get-together. In my pool. I glanced around my backyard, spotting a few unopened beers in her cooler and what looked like party decorations strewn across my lawn. This wasn't just a casual dip. She planned this. Karen, you can't just invite yourself into someone else's yard. This is trespassing. You need to leave now. She laughed, a high-pitched sound that grated on my nerves, and waved her hand dismissively. Trespassing. Don't be ridiculous. We're neighbors. Besides, I've been talking to the others, and they're all on board. It'll be fun. Think of it as community building. My patience was wearing thin. I'd worked a full day, and all I wanted was to relax in my own space. No, Karen, this isn't happening. I'm closing the pool right now. I marched over to the pool shed, where I kept the cover and the pump controls. As I pulled out the heavy tarp, she followed me, her voice rising in pitch. You can't do that. I've already invited people. Do you know how embarrassing this will be? I ignored her, focusing on securing the cover over the water. It was a chore I'd done 100 times, but with her hovering, it felt like a confrontation. She grabbed my arm, her nails digging in slightly, and I pulled away, my voice firm. Don't touch me. Get your stuff and go home. Her face flushed red, and I could see the wheels turning in her head. This wasn't just about a party anymore. It was about control. I finished covering the pool, the tarp snapping into place with a finality that seemed to echo in the air. She stood there, fuming, and I knew this wasn't over. But at that moment, all I could think was how absurd it was that I had to defend my own property from someone I barely knew. Karen didn't leave. Instead, she stormed over to her cooler, yanked out her phone, and started pacing back and forth on my patio. Her face was twisted in anger, and I could tell she was muttering to herself. I watched from a distance, leaning against the shed, trying to figure out my next move. Should I call the police myself? Or just wait for her to calm down and leave? But as I stood there, she hit me with the unexpected. She dialed 911. Yes, hello? I need to report a disturbance. My neighbor, John Mitchell, is threatening me and trying to lock me out of his pool. I think he's dangerous. She practically shouted into the phone, her voice carrying across the yard. I froze stunned. Threatening her? I hadn't raised my voice beyond a firm tone, and the only physical contact had been her grabbing me. She was spinning this into something it wasn't, and the operator on the other end must have picked up on her hysteria because I could hear muffled questions coming from the phone. I stepped closer, my heart pounding. Karen, what are you doing? Hang up the phone. This is ridiculous. She shot me a glare, turning away as if I were the villain in some bad movie. No, you stay back. I'm not letting you intimidate me. He's a big guy, and he's been aggressive. I feel unsafe. Her words were laced with exaggeration, and I realized she was painting me as the aggressor to flip the script. I'm a black man in my mid-40s, built from years of manual labor, and I know how quickly situations like this can escalate based on perceptions. The last thing I needed was for the police to show up and misread the scene. As she continued her one-sided conversation, describing me as unstable and potentially violent, I felt a mix of anger and disbelief. This was my home, my sanctuary, and here she was, fabricating a story to the authorities. The operator asked for my address, and Karen rattled it off without hesitation. Yes, please send someone quickly. I'm in his backyard right now, and I don't know what he might do. She ended the call and crossed her arms, a smug look on her face, as if she just won some twisted game. I backed away, pulling out my own phone to record the interaction. If the police were coming, I needed evidence. Karen, you're making a huge mistake. I'm just trying to enjoy my evening in my own yard. She laughed bitterly. Oh, please. You think you can just bully people because you own a pool? We'll see what the cops say. The wait felt eternal, the sun dipping lower in the sky, casting long shadows over the covered pool. I could hear distant sirens in the background, growing louder, and my mind raced with worst-case scenarios. What if they believed her? What if this turned into something more than a neighbor dispute? The police arrived faster than I expected, 2 squad cars pulling up to my house with lights flashing, but no sirens. I stayed put in the patio, hands visible, trying to de-escalate the situation before it spiraled further. Officers Martinez and Lewis stepped out, their expressions neutral but alert, and Karen immediately rushed over to them, still in her wet bathing suit, pointing at me like I was a criminal. That's him. He's the one who threatened me. I was just trying to have a friendly gathering, and he went ballistic. Officer Martinez approached me cautiously, asking for my side of the story, while Lewis took Karen aside to get hers. I explained everything calmly, how I'd come home from work, found her in my pool without permission, and asked her to leave. I even showed them the video on my phone, which captured her trespassing, and the call to 911. They nodded, seeming reasonable, but Karen wasn't done. As they conferred, she suddenly snapped. In a move that left everyone stunned, she lunged at me, screaming, "You think you can get away with this? I'll make sure everyone knows what you are." Before I could react, she grabbed a beer bottle from her cooler and hurled it at me. It shattered against the shed wall, shards flying everywhere, and I felt a sting as a piece grazed my arm. The officers shouted for her to stop, but she didn't. In her frenzy, she started rifling through my shed, pulling out my tools and waving them around wildly. "This is all stolen. He's probably a thief," she yelled, holding up my perfectly legal hedge trimmer as if it were evidence of some crime. It was clear she was trying to frame me, fabricating a story on the spot to make me look guilty. The absurdity escalated when she pulled out a small canister from her bag. It turned out to be pepper spray, which she'd apparently brought for protection. She waved it threateningly at the officers, shouting, "Stay back. He's dangerous, and I won't let him hurt anyone." Officer Lewis drew his taser, ordering her to drop it, but Karen, in her delusional state, sprayed it wildly in the air. The wind carried some of it back toward her, making her cough and stagger, but not before a mist hit me slightly, burning my eyes. I backed away, wiping my face, as the officers moved in to restrain her. What shocked me most wasn't just her physical outburst, it was the revelation that came next. As they cuffed her, Karen screamed about how she'd planted evidence in my yard earlier that day. In her panic, she confessed to hiding a bag of what looked like drugs under my deck chairs, hoping to make me look like a dealer if things went south. The officers found it almost immediately, a small pouch of white powder she'd snuck in from God knows where. Her plan was to call 911 and then discover it, turning the tables on me completely. It was an insane, calculated move that backfired spectacularly. With Karen restrained and sitting in the back of the squad car, the officers turned their full attention to the scene. Officer Martinez radioed for backup and a forensics team, explaining that this was no longer just a neighbor dispute, it was attempted framing and assault. I stood to the side, my arm stinging from the glass cut, as they meticulously searched my yard. The bag Karen had hidden turned out to contain a substance that tested positive for cocaine on a field kit, and the officers were treating it as serious evidence. "Ma'am, you're in a lot of trouble," Martinez said to her through the car window. Assault, attempted false reporting, and now this possession with intent? Karen's face had gone pale, her earlier bravado crumbling as the reality set in. She started babbling excuses, claiming she'd found the drug somewhere else and was just joking around, but no one was buying it. The officers interviewed me further, taking detailed notes and reviewing my phone footage. I described how she trespassed, called 911 falsely, and then escalated to violence in this bizarre attempt to plant evidence. It felt surreal, like something out of a crime drama, but here I was living it. As more officers arrived, including a detective, they dusted for fingerprints on the bag and the broken bottle. I cooperated fully, providing IDs and even letting them search my house to confirm I had no involvement. The whole time, Karen sat in the car, occasionally shouting wild accusations like, "He's lying. He's part of a gang." But her words only made her look more unhinged. The detective pulled me aside, explaining that cases like this, where someone tries to fabricate evidence to deflect from their own wrongdoing, were rare but not unheard of. "You did the right thing by recording it," he said. "This could have gone very differently." The investigation dragged on for what felt like hours, with neighbors starting to gather at the edge of my yard, whispering and staring. I felt exposed, my private life suddenly public spectacle, but I kept my composure. Inside, though, my mind was racing. How had a simple evening at home turned into this chaos? The officers finally confirmed that the drugs weren't mine. Karen's fingerprints were all over the bag, and my security cameras had caught her sneaking into the yard earlier that afternoon. By the time they wrapped up, the sun had set, and the streetlights cast an eerie glow over everything. Karen was read her rights, and as they prepared to take her away, she locked eyes with me one last time, her expression a mix of defiance and defeat. Little did I know, this was just the beginning of the fallout. The night ended with Karen being hauled away in the squad car, her screams echoing down the street as she was charged with multiple offenses: assault, attempted false imprisonment, through false reporting, possession of a controlled substance, and tampering with evidence. The officers informed me that her actions constituted a felony, especially since she tried to involve illegal drugs in a clear attempt to frame me. It was a shocking turn of events, one that left me standing in my darkened backyard, processing the whirlwind of the evening. As the police wrapped up, they advised me to press charges and offered to connect me with legal support. I nodded, still in disbelief, but grateful for their professionalism. Back inside my house, I cleaned up the mess, sweeping up the glass, tending to my minor cut, and securing my shed. The quiet that followed was almost deafening, a stark contrast to the chaos that had unfolded. I poured myself that drink I'd been craving earlier, sitting on my couch and replaying the day in my mind. It was hard not to feel violated, not just by Karen's trespass, but by her willingness to weaponize lies and illegal tactics against me. In the days that followed, the story made local news, a Karen Gone Wild headline that highlighted the dangers of entitlement and racial biases in neighborhood disputes. Reporters reached out, but I kept it simple. I was just a guy trying to relax after work. The incident forced me to reflect on my own life, the subtle microaggressions I'd faced as a black man in a predominantly white suburb, and how quickly things could escalate. Karen's arrest was a wake-up call, not just for her but for the community, sparking conversations about respect and boundaries. Ultimately, her trial was swift. She pleaded guilty to reduced charges in exchange for a plea deal, but she still faced jail time and probation. I testified, sharing my perspective calmly and directly, and in the end, justice prevailed. Looking back, I realized that what started as a normal day had exposed the fragility of peace in everyday life. I reinforced my security, installed better cameras, and even started a neighborhood watch group to prevent similar incidents. Through it all, I held on to my sense of self. I'm John Mitchell, the hardworking man who values his space and his dignity. And if there's one thing I learned, it's that sometimes standing your ground can lead to the most unexpected resolutions.